And now, I would like to turn to Dr. Verna Hart. And Dr. Verna Hart was nominated by Kay Farrell and Christine Kennedy. And Kay Farrell was last year's inductee into the Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, she could not be with us for today's event. And in her place, Tom Jones, another one of the nominators, has agreed to present the award honoring Dr. Hart. And Tom will share information originally presented by Kay Farrell and by Christine Kennedy. Now, Tom was mentored by Verna Hart for his first master's degree in multiple disabilities and also in deafblindness at George Peabody College for Teachers, which is now a part of Vanderbilt University. 2 years after he completed that program, Dr. Hart recruited him as a doctoral student in the Early Childhood Special Education program at the University of Pittsburgh. And at that program, again, she mentored him. For most of his career, Dr. Jones coordinated a program at Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. And that program developed teachers for infants and children with multiple disabilities and for their families. He retired in 2008 and now is a professor emeritus at Gallaudet. And Tom will be telling us about the contributions of Verna Hart.
Thank you, Dr. Weiner. As you've heard, Dr. Kay Farrell spearheaded Dr. Hart's nomination to the Hall of Fame. Kay wishes she could be here with you today, but another event prevents her from attending. I'm honored to provide this introduction on Kay's behalf. Verna Louise Shirlow Hart gave birth to a child with multiple disabilities in 1953, a time when early intervention and education of children with multiple disabilities were unknown, sparse, or fragmented. With the support of her husband, Chuck, Verna became the tireless advocate of interdisciplinary teaming, early intervention, family education, and education of children with multiple disabilities. From 1952 through 1967, Verna Hart was a special education teacher and administrator in various Michigan public school districts. In those 15 years, she became certified in every special education category. She earned her bachelor's degree in speech correction from the University of Michigan, her master's degree in deaf education from Wayne, from Wayne State University in 1964, and her doctorate in multiple handicaps from Wayne State University in 1967. Her dissertation study involved about 100 teachers, about 100 teachers and a 25-page questionnaire. She found that special education teachers were remarkably, but not surprisingly, unknowledgeable about disabilities besides the disability they had prepared to teach. She also found that experienced and first-year teachers in specific disability areas knew significantly less about blindness and visual impairment than they knew about other disabilities. And the converse was also true. Teachers of blind and partially seeing children, as they then were called, knew significantly little about other disabilities. In 1967, Dr. Hart joined the faculty of George Peabody College for Teachers, now Vanderbilt University, where she coordinated a teacher preparation program in multiple disabilities and deafblindness. At Peabody, Dr. Hart received an early federal grant for special education teacher preparation. It supported her program preparing teachers to use a team approach for students with multiple disabilities. One of her first publications at Peabody was published in the Journal of Visual Impairment and Blindness. She wrote in 1969, "We in teacher preparation must stop training teachers only for certain categorical handicaps. We must accept our share of the responsibility for perpetuating the erroneous idea that only nice, bright, blind children should be the responsibilities of teachers for the blind. We also must accept responsibility," she said in 1969, "for the patchwork quilt design of teacher preparation for multiply handicapped children. The blind child who is functioning on a retarded level is not a blind child plus a retarded child. The two handicaps do not function as addenda, but as multipliers. We can no longer think of separate categories, but of cumulative problems." She wrote that 54 years ago. Dr. Hart might or might not have originated the concept of disabilities being exponential rather than additive, but professionals in many contexts have quoted her again and again. The concept certainly has changed our field. Today, we acknowledge our responsibility to prepare teachers for the students they will encounter, whatever their combination of disabilities. We have also seen our practice grow to the point where 40 to 60% of the children we serve have both visual disabilities and other disabilities. That we today prepare effective teachers for those children is due largely to Dr. Verna Hart. In 1972, Dr. Hart joined the special education faculty of the University of Pittsburgh, where she became professor in early childhood special education. There she received one of the first grants to prepare teachers for infants with disabilities. Dr. Hart developed and advocated a team approach. Her early childhood special education program at the University of Pittsburgh included coursework in transdisciplinary teaming before the term appeared in the amendments to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. She not only taught transdisciplinary collaboration, she modeled it as a consultant to deaf-blind programs, cerebral palsy centers, to specialized schools, centers, and agencies educating children with visual impairment, and programs for children with severe and profound disabilities. Dr. Hart pioneered at least two special education fields related to visual impairment: severe disabilities and early intervention. In 1974, Dr. Hart was a founding member of the American Association for the Education of the Severely and Profoundly Handicapped, now known as TASH. Thus, Dr. Hart created ripples in two ways. Her work affected the fields of visual impairment, deaf-blindness, hearing impairment, multiple disabilities, early childhood, early intervention, and severe disabilities. Second, she mentored countless students at the master's level who went on to teach especially complicated or especially young children with disabilities, to work at agencies or schools providing services for these children and for their families. Those professionals, many now retired, benefited from Dr. Hart's extraordinary experience, knowledge, skills, and mentoring. Her doctoral students transmitted her knowledge and skills to further generations of teacher educators and parents. In 1986, Dr. Hart testified to the Committee on Education and Labor of the United States House of Representatives. Speaking of her own experiences as a parent and grandparent of children with multiple disabilities, Dr. Hart eloquently advocated for a family-centered approach in the law that the committee was considering. She said, A handicap affects the whole child, the whole family. Those who have never had to live through it will never know the personal and family toll that a handicapped child can make. Much can be alleviated through family-based, flexible intervention. Research shows that the children whose parents are given skills to help with their children will make greater gains than other children. Dr. Hart, author of many influential publications, received 2 awards from AER divisions, the Josephine L. Taylor Award and the Berthold Lowenfeld Award. From the Council for Exceptional Children, CEC, she received the Award for Excellence in Teacher Education. Late in her career, Dr. Hart was a project officer in the United States Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, Division of Personnel Preparation. In that role, she profoundly affected countless students, parents, and teachers in all disability-related fields. Dr. Tani Anthony wrote about Dr. Hart. She said, "We still hear you, Dr. Hart. We are still learning from you. Your message is loud and clear. Your voice still rings true in our continued advocacy, commitment, and practice to do better for all students with disabilities, and especially those so vulnerable in infancy and across the years with the presence of additional disabilities." Dr. Hart was nominated to the Hall of Fame by Dr. Kay Farrell of Colorado, Dr. Christine Kennedy of Pennsylvania, Dr. Tani Anthony of Colorado, and myself of New York State. Kay, Christine, and I were Dr. Hart's doctoral students at different times in her career at the University of Pittsburgh. Tani was her colleague in the Early Childhood Visual Impairment Alliance. Dr. Verna Hart, mother, grandmother, teacher, advocate, change maker, bridge builder, mentor, pioneer, and creator of ripples. You are indeed worthy of induction into the Hall of Fame for leaders and legends of the blindness field. And we thank the Board of Governors for honoring her posthumously. And Dr. Christine Kennedy, I believe, will receive the plaque for Dr. Hart.
As you've heard, there was so much that Verna Hart contributed. I think Tani Anthony said it best, that many of us in the field of education really continue to draw from the work that she has done. And since Dr. Hart's family couldn't be with us tonight, the award will be received by Dr. Christine Kennedy, a former student of Dr. Hart's and another nominator of Dr. Hart. And at lunch, she told me that she is so close, or was so close, to Verna Hart that her children often called Verna grandma. And I'm sure it's very meaningful for her to receive this award and to relay it to the family of Verna Hart.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed my honor to be among you for the American Printing House's 155th annual meeting. Further, I am humbled to be accepting the Hall of Fame for Leaders and Legends of the Blindness Award, honoring Verna Hart, who you have chosen to be inducted. A special thank you to everyone who has made this induction possible and the many who have raised funds and contributed for this award, particularly the Vision Impairment and Blindness Program at the University of Pittsburgh. I am certain that Dr. Hart is somehow extremely touched by everyone's generosity. Verna Hart was certainly a leader and legend in almost every field of special education. My years with her at the University of Pittsburgh helped me to realize how vast her knowledge was in the area of early childhood special education. She prided herself in staying abreast of every current practice and theory available in the field. She made sure that all her graduate students were apprised of all resources needed to enhance the learning of the youngest population of learners with disability. As her master and doctoral level student, perhaps the greatest resource that Verna Hart provided to me and many others was information regarding the American Printing House. She taught me and hundreds of others well that the purpose of the printing house was to empower those who are blind or have low vision by providing accessible and innovative products, materials, and services for lifelong success. What a wonderful resource that I was able to carry in my back pocket all the years I worked with infants and young children who were blind or visually impaired. Most importantly, to share this resource with families served a purpose that brought hope and happiness to many. Dr. Hart was definitely a pioneer in her time. Her devotion to personnel prep to meet the challenges of children with multiple disabilities was unheard of in the late 60s. Yet because of her own experience as the parent of a child who was thought to be uneducable, it became her mission to serve this population. She was steadfast in her belief that the parent was the child's first and most important teacher, and that the professionals had a responsibility to guide the parent and help them be able to take the lead. She advocated tirelessly for early intervention, parent support, and education. She designed programs for personnel preparation and made sure to stay abreast of academic theory and research with respect to the youngest learners. It was important to her that teachers always looked at the whole child first, and then secondly, think of how the disability affected the child. This was her legacy. In her academic instruction, students were required to know about every single disability area known to humankind. I can speak to that. But never lose sight of that tiny little learner who had a unique personality and ability despite how the disability or disabilities were impacting growth and development. The world of visual impairment was open to me thanks to Verna Hart. I know firsthand how she loved the American Printing House, and so today, on her behalf, I say thank you over and over again for honoring her as a leader and legend in the field of blindness. I for sure know that somehow she is thrilled to receive this award, as are all of us who have benefited from all that she has imparted. Thank you so much.